We're living at this moment of parallel phenomenon, one world crumbling, another world being struggling to be born. And we are called on to be death doulas and birth doulas. This is not a time for the wounded bird in any of us. It's not a time for the ditzy female. It's not a time for woundology. It's a time to really call ourselves and each other into the highest place. I have found myself saying to younger women, you have things I don't have anymore, but I have some things you don't have yet. And that's what we're awakening to. Somebody told me when I turned 50, 50 is the age past which you don't care what other people think anymore. Then 60, I felt this level of power that is almost like, not only do you not care what other people say, you have to. It's like when a woman is breastfeeding, the milk has to express itself. The wisdom you have, and you can't not say it. I'm just getting started, honey. What you come to ultimately to understand is there's only one of us here. There's no place where one of us stops and another starts. So if I'm holding a sword over your head and judging you, I'm actually judging myself.
You are watching your youth disappear and no one is talking about what comes next. The world tells you to fade quietly, to take up less space, to accept that your best years are behind you. But what if everything you have been dreading about getting older is actually the doorway to the most powerful version of yourself you have ever been? Marianne Williamson, spiritual teacher and author of Midlife Awakening, reveals how to stop grieving what you have lost and start claiming the wisdom, clarity, and unshakable power that only comes from having lived enough to know what matters. You will learn why your scars are not your shame, but your credentials, why forgiveness is not about them, but about freeing yourself, and why the second half of your life is not an ending, but an awakening. On another note, Marianne is in Australia this February, Brisbane, Melbourne, and Sydney, and tickets are in the link. So let's begin. We have the most amazing guest today, which I'm super, super excited about, as you probably can tell. We have Marianne Williamson. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here. Appreciate it.
I'm so glad. And I think before we got on the show, I was just talking about how excited I am about your latest book, which is Midlife Awakening, which we'll be unpacking. But the first thing that we always ask our guests is, what inspired you to do what you do today?
Well, I became a student of A Course in Miracles when I was in my 20s. And I was just so excited about the book in terms of my own personal development and what it gave to me. It's not a religion, but it's a psychological mind training on really the practice of forgiveness, dismantling a thought system based on fear, accepting a thought system based on love instead. So at first it was just what it was doing for me. The career niche that I inhabit today, that you inhabit, that so many didn't even exist at that point. So I didn't have any ambition around speaking other than the joy of doing it. I had had a bookstore, we would have a little study group. Then it just so happened that when I moved to Los Angeles, I was working at a book. So it wasn't anything intentional on my part. I just, you could talk about it on the most superficial level and say I sort of lucked out. But on a deeper level, I think there was an intelligence sort of moving through me that I was receptive to and available for because I had no ambition, because I didn't know there was anything to be ambitious for. And then one thing led to another, and I published a book, and I got fortunate because Oprah Winfrey liked the book, and yada, 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 as they say.
Love it. So you were divinely guided and just followed whatever was presented. You said yes to everything that was presented to you?
It wasn't that I said yes to everything that was presented to me. I said yes to that which was clearly, first of all, speaking about A Course in Miracles gave me great joy. That's all. And so that's what I was thinking about. And then once I started speaking on it, very shortly after that, I was living in Los Angeles and the AIDS crisis burst onto the scene. And because gay men were at that point coming to my lectures so much, because in the middle of this horror, there was this then young woman talking about a God who loves you no matter what and about miracles. So it didn't feel like yes to whatever was in front of me. It was yes to the obvious call of what seemed at that time clearly the right thing to do. It wasn't just whatever was in front of me, but that whatever was in front of me at that time seemed so clearly just the right thing to do. And the thing that filled my soul with joy. It was, I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate.
Yeah, the reason I ask that is because sometimes when we feel so aligned and we're doing things from the heart, the things that we love, our vibrational frequency is so high, and sometimes we don't know what that means for us. It's not like we have a plan, but maybe God or the universe has a plan for us. And so when
Well,
things
that was,
present, it's like even if it's not something that I just found myself, and I can only speak from my experience. I say yes, even though sometimes my body wants to say no.
well, I do believe that it's an intentional universe. The universe is the mind of God unfolding, and it is unfolding in a way that supports the maximal soul growth and self-actualization of all living things. I I get that. I think also, however, there is a counterforce in the mind. So even though at that time in my life, yes, I was just carried along on the wings of angels, as it were, and angels are defined in A Course in Miracles as the thoughts of God. So yeah, there were later times in my life where it was not so easy to discern, and where I still have questions about certain things. So yes, I do believe that in any given moment, certainly according to the principles of A Course in Miracles, in any given moment, two things are happening. We are invited to take that next step into the higher possibility. If it's a situation we played well before, it's almost like the universe is saying, can you do it even better this time? To grow, to open the heart, to live and co-create a field of graciousness for yourself and others in which miracles occur naturally. However, at the same time, that situation presents a temptation to fall back into egoic patterns based on fearing constriction, in which case we will deflect the miracle. A Course in Miracles says that everyone has a highly individualized curriculum. So what that would mean then is that every single circumstance in our lives, everyone, this is it. This is it. This is the perfect one. How do we know? Because it's the one that's happening and how you're going to play it. So it's a yes to being the better version of ourselves, but there's a part of our minds which would make it a yes, perhaps, to fall into some of the least self-actualized patterns.
Because
You
I
know,
think,
truth is simple, but life is complicated.
yeah. Because as I'm hearing you say that too, for me, the yes, like the calling, let's call it the calling that we have,
Of course.
and then the ego gets in the way and talks you into, you know what, they might judge you, they might think less of you, they might ridicule you, and so even though you have this pull towards what we do, the ego, I think, sometimes gets in the way into talking us out. Like, I think that it's always telling us lies, right? Obviously.
Well, yeah, it's not just sometimes, it's always.
Yeah.
I think that when my career began, because there was not social media yet, because this career niche didn't even exist yet, I didn't have to deal with doubters. I mean, and that became a real issue later in my life, because if you're writing a book and somebody doesn't like it, they just don't read it. If you are giving lectures and somebody doesn't want to go, they don't go. So I didn't, and I was finding such joy and such love later in my life when I was doing political things that felt just as much a call of my soul because I felt I was having the same conversation on a um on a collective level. I felt I was talking about the same stuff, just using some different language about public policy being more loving and so forth. I encountered not only for myself in terms of um, it was a much more complicated game of life. It wasn't just a matter of, oh, I'm going to give lectures on Saturday morning, and also from the world. So it has been a lot of processing for me because in both cases, I felt I was just doing what my heart led me to do, but I also see what was involved. Um, in other words, sometimes it's simple and sometimes it's not so simple, but in those years it was, and I feel very fortunate. I think today the world is, I feel for young people a lot because we were so much, when I was younger, we were so much freer to do things without the world casting an opinion about every little word we said. And also, when I was younger, I feel so sorry for these young people today, Catherine, because we all made mistakes in our 20s, but they weren't written into the ethers of the internet to be with us forever. And especially at such a mean-spirited time. It's concerning because it's not, yeah, it's concerning.
It is so concerning. I mean, I always think about the past, about the time when we didn't have mobile phones and we had this sense of freedom, like the real sense of freedom. Like I can't, there's times where I go back and think, what was that like? Where I could go out and nobody could get in touch with me. Nobody, no phone, nothing. And I could just be free in nature and
Exactly. 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 And also, I don't know about Australia, but I know in the United States, in those days, you were young and you didn't have any money, but you weren't worried about it yet because you still felt, well, I'm a waitress, I'm a temporary secretary, and and it'll grow and it'll unfold in a way we didn't, there just wasn't so much economic constriction, there wasn't so much social constriction. So yeah, that's why it's so important that this information, that the principles of the spiritual life are so mainstreamed now by people like yourself and others, so that at a younger age, people are learning these tools, which are so important if we're to live lives of peace and abundance and success, however we define success and happiness. So, yeah.
And I always look at success as an external thing because to me, achievement is that internal, to me, achievement is an internal driver, knowing that I've done something for myself without the external validation of it. And so for me, success is very built on what we have and what we show. And, it's an external thing for me, my experience, of course. But I think
Well,
yeah, go on, sorry.
well, I agree with you. I think the highest success is to go to sleep at night and know, yeah, I contributed in some way. You know, there's an old Christian saying, virtue is its own reward. The idea that you feel good about yourself. You can look in the mirror and go, yeah, I did what I could today. I think that's the highest level of success. But I also say that, much as I was pointing out before about the conditions of my younger life, um, it's easy for me to say because I have a career, I can write books. I feel a lot for people who are so inundated by social and cultural and economic factors that the grasping and the fear of almost living on a level of survival makes it harder. But that's okay because, as the Course in Miracles says, the effects of love are maximal. I I'm just glad that voices like yours, conversations like this, are as frequent as they are, so that more and more people can hear them and know, yeah, I can practice some forgiveness and some love and see how that works in my life today, and you'll find miracles do happen.
Yeah, and it's I think also, and we were talking about before about for me how I related to the midlife awakening too. It's about, I think it's only taken to this point in my life where I can actually look back in my life and have the unconditional love, regardless of what's happened in my timeline, whether it's separations, divorce, whatever that may be. But I can actually look back on it and be grateful for those lessons rather than holding the burden of those lessons. And love in your book, and you talk about time is not linear, it's spiral. So basically, if we don't learn the lessons, it's compounding. So basically, it sounds like the stakes will get higher as we evolve, as we become wiser, let's say, not older, but wiser. And for me, I love the fact that even fear, when you're talking about fear for the young, I still, and this is what this book is beautifully written about, there's so much fear about aging as well, right? There's this fear of missing out, fear of being left alone, fear of not making a difference. And I love, there's another piece in the book when you talk about the woman who was, let the younger people take care of it. I think she was 66 years old. And then the person said to her, no, we need you. This is a time we need you because of your wisdom. Just that reframe was, oh, I've got goosebumps even just saying it. So the fear, I
Oh,
think,
thank
even
you.
still resides in us, men, women and men at our age.
Well, we're living at a very critical time in history. And obviously, for the human race to survive, there have to be younger people, there have to be younger women, right? The female body to be able to um, procreate. But if we don't produce more wisdom, then even if we continue to produce more babies, they won't make it without some greater wisdom, over, you know, pouring forth on this earth so that we change directions in some critical ways. And I think that that wisdom often comes from the accumulation of experience, both our failures and our successes, which is why that birthing of a new world might come from your womb at one point in your life, perhaps, but it comes from your consciousness as we get older. Opening our minds, the cervix opens and the mind opens. It's all the same natural patterns. As far as time is concerned, the Course in Miracles says, I mean, if you think about it, the past only exists in our mind, the future only exists in our mind. The Course in Miracles says the one point where God's time, eternity, intersects linear time is in the present moment. And we spend so much time in our younger years obsessing about the past or the future. And I think, I always say in the younger years, you're so obsessed with what might happen. And in your older years, you're trying to figure out what just did happen. What was that? I'm not at the point that you just said. I look forward to being there. I have not yet worked out. I think I'm where many people are. I have not completely forgiven myself and others for some of the cringe moments in my past. Mainly myself, I have to say. I'm further ahead with forgiving others. Um, but that's a process too. That's part of the process of age. And and a lot of grief and pain goes along with that. You don't have the physical time ahead of you that you might have had when you were younger. I have a young woman friend who's going through quite a crisis now. Uh, but I can honestly say to her, this is one chapter, this too shall pass. There will be so many more chapters in your life. As we get older, it's a little harder to accept sometimes. Um, that's what the book is about, actually, just working through that stuff. Now, the Course in Miracles says, much along the line when you were talking about time as a spiral, which is a more Eastern orientation, the Course in Miracles says that time is a learning device and that we just go through the same lessons over and over again until you get it. And if you don't get it, it's coming back around again. And when you do get it, you get to a higher level. Um, I think the older we are, the more we can appreciate that. The older we are, I think for myself and for so many I know, we get more humble, more grateful. Um, when you see somehow life, you realize how important the whole thing is. There's that line from a Bonnie Raitt song, life is awfully precious when there's less of it to waste.
I love that. Absolutely love that. For me, it's like I have to also be honest in saying my truth about the forgiveness. There are times where I find it really hard to forgive, but I found what was happening for me. It was I was bringing the past into the present, to forgive something that happened in the past. And I felt like I was reliving, because it was like almost like visceral, like it was reenacting what took place. And
That's what
so
the ego would do.
the only way that I was able to release that, Marianne, was just to accept that it took place, rather than,
Yeah.
because every time I brought it in and thought my soul chose this experience for me to expand, and there was a lesson in that. And I know the lesson in it. It's just making sure that I don't repeat the lesson. I guess that sits with me.
Well, everybody has the same experience. These are laws of consciousness. It's not just one person's experience versus another's. A Course in Miracles says that if you bring the shadow figures of your past into the present, then you are programming the future to be just like the past. You said that you found your peace by just accepting that it happened. Um, I think that there's a level of acceptance that is most profound when you can both atone for your own mistakes if they occurred within that, and forgive others for theirs, which comes from a kind of knowing that the love was real, the love was eternal, the love you gave, the love that you received, and the rest was literally a kind of shared illusion or nightmare, a kind of hallucination of consciousness. Um, and you don't have to carry it with you. But it's, to me, that's sometimes easier said than done, because the ego would very much like to continue bludgeoning ourselves um, with all of it, what they did or what you did or what you didn't do or what they didn't do. And of course, that's the shadow, that's the ego, and it's quite a struggle at times.
And I also find too, and I like this, once again, this is only like spending the time with myself every morning. Like I will wake up 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning and spend time myself journaling, meditating, contemplating. And I find that too, I'm starting, the level of accountability that sits with me has really leveled up, where I see that everything that is in front of me is really an illusion, because it's an effect of my cause. And so I always then, if I want to look beyond that, is almost to co-create with God or the universe to manifest something that is not of a visual thing, like a component, whether it's, I use this example, you could look at your bank account and go, that's all I've got and that's all I'm worth, or that's all I'll ever attain. But when you look at that, and that's the effect of what you created or the cause, to look beyond that is to think beyond that. And so I'm starting to see that everything around me is very much an illusion and a creation of what I was thinking and feeling at the time. And so having to change that, that's deep work. I don't know about you, Marianne, but it's constant work. Like it's constant conscious to be present and not get caught up in the rut. How do you do it?
Well, it's moment by moment. If you meditate in the morning, it's going to be a lot easier. A Course in Miracles says you achieve so little because you have undisciplined minds. If you wake up in the morning and you go directly to the news, you go directly to social media, especially in today's world with so much chaos and so much mean-spiritedness, if you do that, it's like you're saying to the chaos, come on, eat me alive. I'm open and I'm available for that. But if you ground yourself in whatever your spiritual practice is in the morning, it makes all the difference, because it's kind of like the yoga of consciousness. You get yourself in the correct position of alignment with the thought ever unfolding thoughts of love. And when the Course in Miracles says miracles occur naturally as expressions of love, if you don't do that, you kind of just get drawn into the undertow of a fear-based world. And so it's practicing, it's building your attitudinal muscles. Just like we build our physical muscles, we build our attitudinal muscles. And just as there is physical gravity that will pull our muscles down if we're not working on keeping them up, there is the psychological and emotional gravity of negativity and anger and victimization and all of that. But every moment, as you said, is every single moment is a moment of choice, and we either make that choice consciously or we make it unconsciously, to either open the heart or to constrict. If we open the heart, the miracle, the breakthrough, the repair, the next best moment of harmony will unfold. And if we constrict, we will deflect those miracles. And then, like you and I were saying, it'll come back around again. It'll be held in trust for you until you're ready to receive it. And yeah, as you said, it's work because it's constant every moment. Our thoughts are so powerful. A Course in Miracles says there is no such thing as a neutral thought. Every thought we think either takes us and those around us to a greater experience of oneness and peace, or on some level into greater anxiety, depression, fear, separation. That's how powerful we are. But that's why that is the work. And like you said, it's interesting. You were talking about waking up at 3 and 4 in the morning. Four used to be called the witch's hour. The moment when, because things are quieter. It's so funny in today's world, isn't it? How many like business emails you get, somebody 3:54 in the morning, everybody's up. You know what I'm saying? And there's a reason for that because the world is so loud. You can't do your best thinking sometimes. And then those hours of the negative ions and easier meditation and it's we are evolving into that next state of our consciousness, which has greater clarity and peace. And enough of us evolving in such a way is really the only hope for humanity at this point, because, it's like Einstein said, we will not solve the problems of the world from the level of thinking we were at when we created them. We must evolve beyond the racial consciousness that has dominated the planet and gotten us to where we are. We're not going to get anywhere different unless there's that change in our thinking. And all we can do is change it in our own individual lives and building that critical mass. That fascinates me because that says to me that the conversation that you and I are having now, millions of people are having it at this moment, different language, different ethnicity, different context, but it's something happening from the bottom of things. The human race is almosting something. We're living at this moment of parallel phenomenon, one world crumbling, another world being struggling to be born. And we are called on to be death doulas and birth doulas. This is not a time for the wounded bird in any of us. It's not a time for the ditzy female. It's not a time for woundology. It's a time to really call ourselves and each other into the highest place. That's how I experience this moment.
I love that because I mean, I do see the dichotomy at play all the time. And I love the fact that you even talk about that because I do feel that, I mean, the dichotomy of fear and love, that's a dichotomy in itself, and that creates separation itself. And it's like, how do we then can sit in between these dichotomies? But it's actually not so, to me, it's like I practice love as much as possible because I think love is all there is, right? And to me, fear is the distance, the further the
It's the
distance between
absence of love.
the
Yeah, the
absence of
Course in
love. Yeah.
Miracles says fear is to love what darkness is to light. It's not a thing, it's the absence of a thing. And when people say, well, how do you know when you are aligned with love? The Course in Miracles says it's quite easy. Are you at peace? And if you're not at peace, who am I not forgiving? Where am I too self-referenced? Where am I not thinking of the other person? Where am I concerned with past or future rather than the present? I mean, once you know the tools of alignment with the consciousness of love, it starts as an intellectual construct and then takes a journey without distance from the head to the heart. I mean, these things you're talking about are really very simple, but life is complicated. So the issue is practicing and disciplining ourselves in any given moment. And like you said, those are the moments. Oh, I'm in that in-between space. And then if you see it from a perspective such as A Course in Miracles, then you believe in an internal helper or guide or teacher. And sometimes in those moments, I know there's a loving perspective here that would give me peace, but I'm too triggered, I'm too wounded, I'm too bruised right here. What the transgression against me was too intense. I am willing to get there, and I am praying for help in doing so. And, it's not so simple sometimes as, oh, just lighten up. But from the perspective of the genuinely religious, it's the idea that God, the God of our understanding, the Holy Spirit, however you name that, is there to respond to our slightest invitation. I'm willing to see this differently. I'm willing. And then amazing things happen. Um, Truly amazing things happen that give us the capacity to open our heart in a place where before it had been too difficult.
I so agree with that. Even just that statement, I'm willing to see this differently, opens up the possibilities and the opportunities that are at hand rather than being, stuck in whatever that may be. Because even like with the dichotomy of the love and fear, I just try to also understand that it is what it is, as much as I practice love, but also being very consciously aware not to judge the fear as well. Like I feel like it's important to just be love, if that makes sense. And so I try to get out of my head as often as possible into my heart. It's not always easy because the mind, I think that's where the ego lives. The mind doesn't stop. It's constant. It's constant. But I think also we've been conditioned that way. From a societal cultural perspective, I think we're very conditioned in that way. And I love it even in your book when you talked about when you look back in your timeline and you looked at some old videos and and this is going back, like, I'm really curious, like when we go back and have a look at ourselves, those videos, what you were experiencing back then, you're bringing that past into your present. And so how do we then, obviously you're practicing love and forgiveness, because I know I've looked back in my timeline and gone, oh, how embarrassing. I can't believe I did that. But then how do I become more loving and nurturing to that, Catherine, and understand that, that was a time and a place and you did the best you could back then. And you were young and you made the mistakes, but how can you forgive yourself today? Like, how do we do that?
Well, the metaphysical principle there is what is religiously called the atonement. In Catholicism, it's going to confession. In Judaism, the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, is called the Day of Atonement. Alcoholics Anonymous, you have to admit your character defects. I think sometimes you say, I didn't know any better. Sometimes, yes, you did. And it's best not to paper that over. You should have. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, and remorse and regret, only sociopaths don't have it. So atonement is where we look at it, we admit it. You were not allowing the spirit of love to guide you. You were thinking only of yourself, or you were not being reflective and allowing what God's will was, whatever it was. And the Course in Miracles says you go back to that moment. You have to admit it. He says in the Course in Miracles, I cannot take from you what you will not release to me. It's like a spiritual detox. It has to come up. So you have to look at it. And I don't think you paper over it with, well, I was young. Yeah, I remember as a friend of mine once said about something I'd done. I said, well, I was young. And she looked at me and she said, you weren't that young. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you weren't that young. So sometimes, and that's part of the pain. That's part of the grief. And you admit it, and you say to God, I am willing to let the Holy Spirit guide me now and make me a better person now. And it's like in the story of the prodigal son, the father was more excited to see the son who left and came back than to see the son who never left. And we're a prodigal son generation. So I atone for this now. I allow myself to experience the remorse, the regret. Should I have harmed myself, sabotaged opportunities, possibly harmed others? But only the ego would have you then bludgeon. The Holy Spirit would have you recognize it, burn through it, see it, put it in the hands of God, and say, may I learn from even this. We can learn from, the only real failure in life is something you failed to learn from. May I be a better person now. May I be more responsible in the places where I was irresponsible. May I be someone who can help share some wisdom that I myself did not embody, so that maybe they will not suffer as I caused myself to suffer. May I be a more grateful person now. May I be a more humble person now. And that's spiral. And that's really the miraculous nature of the universe, because that's what is really the mercy that is built in to the divine loving intelligence of the universe. Um, you didn't get it then, but get it now. And may I be a better person. And that's part of the miracle of age, that we have the opportunity to be not stupid anymore, to be not irresponsible anymore, etc. And that's what I think provides a space for unbelievable possibilities in chapter 3 too. because we finally learned enough, usually from our failures as much as from our successes, how to be the person we wish we'd been, but we are now.
Yeah, I love that. And I think also in your book, you mentioned this as well. Like, I love the fact that there's maybe a real softness when we're younger, but as we mature into our midlife, there's more of well, it's not more of a hardness. I think for me, it's more that I know what I want and I know what I don't want. And I really stand in my truth and speak it. Now, not everyone takes it. And I think that that's the shift in what I've evolved into is I can stand in my truth without taking the responsibilities of others on how they're going to react to or respond.
Particularly as women.
Yes.
Particularly as women. I think, yeah, you're not looking for the approval of the patriarchy the same way and all that kind of stuff. Even though you understand the almost the cellular memory that women have of punishment for having been in our wildness and our wisdom. And, misogyny is a very real thing. And and I think that that increases a sense of the importance of sisterhood, because it's one thing to say, I'm going to stand in my truth. If you're going to stand in your truth, and in today's, and I can't speak so much about Australia, obviously, I'm not an Australian, but in the United States, if a woman stands on her truth, good for you. If a woman stands on her truth and wants to have a business, good for you. If a woman stands on her truth and wants to write a book, good for you. If a woman stands on her truth and wants to in any way actually affect the levers of power as they apply to political, social, and economic systems, they're coming after you. So it's easier said than done to stand in your truth once you're developing some level of influence in the larger sphere. That's why sisterhood is so important, because the answer to that is sisters to your left and sisters to your right, who, if they come after you, will say, excuse me, you come after her, you're coming after all of us. And that, I think, is a really important issue at a time when women are saying, I'm going out there, I'm going out there. You better have your sisters around you, or it could be a very dangerous place.
And then even going out there and standing in your truth and saying, what's on your mind, right? The thing is, like, then you might be seen as, well, she's a real bitch, or she's a real
Or
hard ass,
crazy.
or
I mean,
crazy.
it's like witch burning. Yeah, and I saw that when I did political things, like, ooh, she's crazy. It's like, what is this, 16th century Scotland or something? And witch burning, and yeah, and bitch, which is really just changing the consonant from witch to bitch, but it's the same witch burning archetype. Ooh, she's a witch, she's a witch, she's a witch. She's a bitch, she's a bitch. Have you ever seen her be a bitch? No, but I heard from somebody who knew somebody who worked for her once who had a cousin who said she's a bitch. They don't do this to men. And that's why we have to stand up for one another. And I've, I've seen.
Well, the witches used to get burnt many, many moons ago, right? For standing in their truth, speaking their mind.
Well, in societies like yours and mine, they don't burn women at the stake anymore, thank God. Although in some societies, even today, I mean, look at the Taliban. There is great, I mean, horrifying things towards women. In societies like ours, the chains that bind us are more internal chains. And so we no longer burn women at the stake, but we have not yet routed out of Western consciousness a sense of suspicion towards women who are not painting between the lines, who are not just saying the script assigned to us. There's a projection of guilt and suspicion. Where does she get that? What does she want to do with that? She's not under our control. And I've definitely seen that in my life.
But I think it goes back to also, I mean, just from my experience as well, where there is very much a conditioning, and I wonder whether we inherited that from our lineage, like our mother, grandmother, and so forth. Where, because I know for me, my default is guilt. So the moment, even though I can say I can stand in my truth, and then I go and then think about it and go, oh, I feel guilt. Why do I feel guilt? I have no idea why I feel guilt. But then I see my mother go through it, and I see my grandmother go through it, and it's almost like inherited. And it's an unconscious act.
One of the moments in the Course in Miracles when I first read the Course that I said, oh my God, this is it. It said, the ego doesn't tell you that you did something wrong. It just tells you you are wrong. I remember with what you're saying, and I've written about this. I remember when I first read the Course in Miracles, I thought maybe I did something terrible in my past and it was so awful I just don't remember it. Why do I feel so guilty? Yeah, well, that's the ego. You're just bad, you're ugly. That's nobody else even has to say it. You're saying it to yourself first. And there are so many ways that society has of fostering that sense of not okayness, not enoughness, how we're supposed to look, or sexual appeal, or approval. Um, but I think we're working all this out. I mean, I think, it's all grist for the mill. It's what we're all going through.
Yeah, I know. And I think that's why I love so much about the stuff that you've written in your midlife awakening. It's really like, it's not like midlife is not an ending, it's an awakening. And so when I look at that too, I think too, when you talk about the awakening, what's that awakening us to emotionally, mentally, spiritually?
Well, I think that there is grief that we have to go through first. You have to go through the grief of what is no longer yours in order to get to the point of receiving that which is only yours now. I have found myself saying to younger women, you have things I don't have anymore, but I have some things you don't have yet. And that's what we're awakening to. It's like Emerson said, as I age, my beauty steals inward. You're awakening in the things that you've said. You're awakening to, like, I'm going to say what I think and what I want, regardless. Somebody told me when I turned 50, 50 is the age past which you don't care what other people think anymore. Then 60, I felt this level of power that is almost like, not only do you not care what other people say, you have to. It's like when a woman is breastfeeding, the milk has to express itself. The wisdom you have, and you can't not say it. So you're awakening to a grandeur that, we're living in a world where the undertow is, you're over the hill, you're invisible now, you're all used up. So a lot of ageism now. I don't know how it is in Australia, but in the United States, a lot of ageism, almost masquerading as something else. So we have to counter that undertow because it's a new dawn for us. And the new dawn for us, we know can be of help in bringing a new dawn to the world, but we have to hold each other's hand and support each other in this because if we're on our own, it's tough. It's tough. Oh, old lady, shut up, grandma. You know? Excuse me, that's my sister you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? We got to really do that. You have a fraction of the wisdom that woman had, right? So that's what how I see this moment.
I love that, and I think the way that I've how I've interpreted your book is you're here to redefine what midlife is, because we've been conditioned, and I hear all the time, people around me are saying, even starting to speak to me about my retirement. I said, I'm not even thinking about my retirement. I'm not going to even retire. I don't even want to retire. Like,
I'm
why
just
do I
getting
have to
started,
even talk
honey. Yeah,
about it? Sorry.
I'm just getting started, honey.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's how I feel.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like I'm just starting to live my life now because of all the wisdom and all the knowledge that I'm still gaining. I still don't get it all, but I'm willing and open to receiving and playing with it as well, right? Like I said, like for me, I'm consciously aware of the relationships around me, consciously aware that I'm always projecting, and when I'm projecting onto them, if because we're always unconscious, the way I see it, like you're always in some way hypnotic or hypnotized because we are allowing the unconscious patterns and programs to run on autopilot. And so if I'm projecting onto people around me and them behaving that way, then it's me that the accountability sits with me. I've got to change the way that I think, my belief system, the way that I feel. I never had that wisdom before. And so now that I have this wisdom, I feel like I'm ready to play with life.
A Course in Miracles says that at every moment we're either extending love or projecting fear. We're not always projecting. Sometimes we're we're just extending love. But if we're not extending love proactively, intentionally, then we are projecting fear. And the Course in Miracles says every moment you're either host to God or hostage to the ego. Um, yeah, and if we're projecting blame, guilt, judgment, separation on other people, what you come to ultimately to understand is there's only one of us here. There's no place where one of us stops and another starts. So if I'm holding a sword over your head and judging you, I'm actually judging myself. When you were talking before about feeling guilty, the way to not feel guilty is to ask yourself, well, who are you judging for anything? Because if you're judging anyone, you are, the whole idea of space between the two of us is itself a learning device. There is no space. There's just one of us here. So whatever you're thinking about someone else, you're thinking about yourself. The only way to really experience self-acceptance is to accept others. The only way to really have self-respect is do something respectable, respectable. Um, it's all about how we choose to think about other people. The Course in Miracles, there's a part in the Course where it says, do not look to yourself to find yourself, for that's not where you are. You find yourself in relationship with other people.
So true. So
Yeah,
true.
it's amazing.
And I mean, I think also it's like I'm always grateful for the triggers because they teach me that this
You're grateful for what?
the triggers. When I get triggered
Yeah.
by somebody or triggered by something, which I'm human, I'm not going to say I don't, but I love the fact that I do because it's like, oh, why did I get triggered? And then actually it actually makes me look within myself and then to get a better understanding as to what I need to do. Whether I need to accept myself more or love myself more, which is a big topic in
Well,
itself.
I'd be dishonest if I said, oh, I love my triggers. I can't say that I love mine, but I can honestly say that more often than not. More often than not, I am disciplined enough to say, okay, this is about you, Marianne. And those are the moments where, from a Course in Miracles perspective, put them in the hands of the Holy Spirit. I'm willing. I'm willing to see this differently. The fact that I'm not at peace, the fact I'm anxious right now, clearly this is my stuff. I have a knot in my consciousness. If I could just lighten up in this moment, I would, but I really need some help here. And that's when incredibly miraculous things happen, where you are given a thought or shown something. I'll give you an example, just a little example, but it was meaningful to me. About a month ago, I was with an old friend, and she said something that hurt my feelings. And I was really kind of offended and triggered by it. And the next day, I found myself saying to a mutual friend, I really didn't like it when she said that. I thought that was really, and I thought, okay, Marianne, come on. And I just went into myself and because it was like, Marianne, you've known her for years. She loves you. She's a real sister. Come on. And I just, as soon as I was willing, and I went, just closed my eyes and I went deep and I asked, just ask, I am willing to see this differently. And it became so clear to me, her words, what she was meaning to say was very different. I got what she was meaning to say, and she couldn't have known that languaging that way would trigger me. But it was like beyond the physicality. I was given by spirit the opportunity to see what she was really saying, which was love and support. So, but I had to go through that moment because my ego was, oh, how could she say that? I was really turned off when she's whatever. And then it's like, okay, stop. Go into that holy instant. I'm willing to see this differently. And then what happens is either, as in that case, she really did mean a loving thing, and my ego heard particular words and phraseology, or, I always say when someone has hurt you, pray for their happiness for 30 days. One of two things is going to happen within 30 days. Either their behavior will change or you won't care. And I think that's a large part of the triggers. It's just, if nothing else, you're lifted above to a place where someone else, I've noticed, I could hear something, get triggered by it. A friend of mine could hear the same thing, but because they had a different childhood, hello, they're not triggered by it. So
Yeah.
that's where the notion of the Holy Spirit, the internal teacher, the guide really makes all the difference. Because if we're only trying to teach ourselves or change ourselves, often we end up in a struggle with yourself. And that's why I believe a path of radical surrender, radical devotion, really prayer, which the Course says is the medium of miracles. Um, you become humble enough to say, I can't do this by myself because I've been carrying this issue for a long time and it's not going away. I think that's a big lesson in life when you realize I'm 45 and I'm carrying this, and clearly the breakthrough hasn't happened. And I first saw this going down when I was in my 20s, right? So I think as we get older, if we are in practice with these things, we learn to ask God for help.
So you're the way that you diffuse your triggers, not to trying to find within you what triggered, why you got triggered. It's more about the willingness to see it differently rather than because
Absolutely. What does it matter why? I think that one of the really false teachings of the modern world has been the psychotherapeutic tradition that thinks if you analyze the darkness enough, you will get to the light. It doesn't matter where you got it. It's yours now. It doesn't matter, mommy, daddy, in your 20s, who abused you, whatever, what the trauma was. The point is that it has developed now into a place where the wires got crossed. It's an emotional, almost like an emotional muscle spasm. And how does that show itself? As what appears to others like a character defect. The, the, the healing is not in the past, it's in the present. Don't text, don't email, don't open your mouth, don't make a phone call. Go inside, be still and know, ask for help. Knowing where you got this. In my life, knowing how I got this way has done me no good. Knowing you are this way, Marianne, and be willing not to be and ask God to help. That's the miracle. And it's a
that
big
is
difference.
that is a miracle. But the teachings today is very different because it is true about looking within. And so what's the trigger? It's like, well, I got triggered because I actually started doubting myself. And so then you start over analyzing and overthinking about, well, what do I need to do to change that? And how do I let go of that? Or how do I surrender to what is? But your way is just the willingness to see it differently. It's just adding more light to it without going into the darkness.
Well, also, the past is not where the healing lies. The Course in Miracles says your childhood didn't even happen the way you think it did. The, the healing is in the present moment. That's the only moment. God intersects the linear timeline is in the present, is in the present. I was once giving a lecture, it was years ago. It was a big audience, and a woman came up to the microphone and she said, and I can't remember what it was, but it was something we could all relate to. And it was some behavioral pattern that she displayed in relation to her husband. And she said, I do it. I know I do it. I get that it's having a very derogatory, deleterious effect on my marriage. Can you give me any help, any insight to not doing this, to working this through? And I keep working on it. And I remember because it was something that so many people could relate to, everybody was looking at me. The whole room was looking at me. And I said, yeah, I think I have an insight. And everybody's looking at me. And I said, don't do it anymore. And the whole room got it. It's like they say in AA, you can act yourself into a new way of thinking more easily than you can think yourself into a new way of acting. I remember a moment in my life. I've been working on something, I'm working on it, I'm working on it. And then one day, someone who I respected, I displayed whatever that characteristic was, and someone I really respected looked at me like I was pathetic. Just looked at me and I got their lack of respect. Nothing was said, but it was almost like, wow, I thought you were more. I thought you were bigger. That did it. That moment did more for me than years of therapy. Healthy shame.
I was going to ask how is that Healthy shame. I'm really curious. Like, how do you not get triggered by that, not react to that? And actually, I'd love to hear more about the healthy shame, because I think shame is one of those things that we walk around with and we banter shame. It's one of those things that we
Like you
all
and I were
carry.
talking about before, just bludgeoning yourself. No, this is different. Only a sociopath feels no remorse. Only a sociopath feels no shame. Only a sociopath feels no regret. Only a sociopath could be perpetrating those ICE raids going on in the United States today and watching the unbelievable pain and suffering and trauma being perpetrated on innocent people. Whoever doesn't feel ashamed of doing that, there's something wrong with them, right? So sometimes we'll go through things and we feel really bad about it. And people with the best of intentions will say, oh, don't feel bad. Sometimes it's healthy to feel bad, to recognize it and then give it over with the atonement. That's healthy shame. The fact that people feel no shame for raping the earth, that they feel no shame for cutting down the Amazon, that they feel no shame for allowing children to die so needlessly. No, 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 no. There's healthy shame, which is ethics. I will not do that. That is wrong. We've lost the sense something's a right and wrong. So I think sometimes and that's the only way to get rid of the feeling bad. It's, yeah, I did it. I want to be a better person now. And I'm growing from this in the ways that you and I have talked about here. And that's what it means to mature. And that goes back to the issue of older. Once I was, and I don't know if I put that in this book, but I remember I was looking at these young women. I was in a restaurant or somewhere, and these young women and the way their breasts and the way they were acting, and I thought, oh, that's so like, and I was judging, 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 and then all of a sudden, Marianne, do you remember who you were when you were their age? It's like, excuse me. So,
Thank you for your vulnerability, Marianne, because it's so true. I think it's like people that will look at someone like you that, and definitely I, including myself, I love the fact that you can normalize something like shame. One, normalize the things that you experience yourself, because you're human. But it's so refreshing to hear it that I think from another woman to another woman. I mean, I've gone through that myself. I think as we get older, we start maybe, we look at other women and go, oh, everything, for me, I'll say everything's gone south, right? But then you see these, like you say, these beautiful women in perky, and I do that. Sometimes I will judge and go, oh, I mean, could that skirt get any shorter? You know, or, you know what I mean?
what were you wearing when you were 23? It's like, oh my God. I
Yeah.
know. I know, I know. Well, I don't think the zeitgeist of this moment is that people such as yourself and myself, coaches, podcast hosts, authors, whatever, the zeitgeist is not that we're perfect enlightened masters. I do think there are such things as perfect enlightened masters, but I'm not one. And I think the zeitgeist for many of us is we're one step ahead in time. That's what the course is. You're one step ahead in time. Um, and we're sharing, I think that that's where down in those weeds, this is what really happened. And
Yeah.
also, even if you don't admit it, people can see it. So I think I found in my over 40-year career, I found a lot with this is how audiences are. And I think that this is really important for anyone who's doing coaching, counseling, the work we do, and so forth. People aren't necessarily expecting us to be perfect, but they're expecting us to be trying. And they can smell it if we are and if we're not. And spiritual hypocrisy is it's a stink. And yet spiritual honesty, let the light in and we can all grow together.
I love that. I think also that comes if I look back in maybe even 20 years ago, I definitely used to wear a persona, a mask, and and pretend to be someone that I wasn't. But as I've evolved in my older years, definitely I can be who people go, oh, Catherine, I thought you got your shit together. Like you've got an academy, and I'm like, no, I'm human. I'm still working through this just like you are. And I think that just this level of vulnerability and authenticity, like you said, if you're not congruent with how you speak, what you write about, people will pick up on it.
Yeah.
100%.
In the Course in Miracles, I'm not sure, but I think it's the only lesson that is repeated is I am as God created me. The realization that at our core, and you can't accept this about yourself until and unless you're willing to accept it about other people as well. That the essence of who we are, we're all perfect and innocent. And we just get very confused living on this earth. It's hard. That famous Victor Hugo quote, anytime you meet anyone, know you're in the presence of a great war. You're talking to someone, you have no idea what they're going through. And I think that's another thing that age gives you. Life is so much more fragile, and people are so much more sensitive than, we're so hip to how sensitive we are, how fragile we are. And far too often we're not considering, yeah, so's everybody else too. It's hard for them too, not just for you, sweetheart. You know?
Mm.
Whoa. I always say 90% of the time, the best advice I can give myself is, oh, get over yourself. It's not about you. Jesus didn't come to earth to say, love yourself. Came to the earth to say, love one another. Because that's the only way to truly love yourself, because your self with a big S is one with everyone. So withhold of love anywhere, it's a withhold of love of yourself. My big task right now is loving Donald Trump. To find that place where you can love the soul and deeply, passionately disagree and act on that disagreement from that place of love. That's my big and let me tell you, in the United States, that's a challenge for many people.
That's amazing. I mean, and that also, I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to say that as well, because I think too, it's like, that's the other thing, like love yourself, because if you can't love yourself, you can't love others. And so there's that big, that's been around for quite some time. And it's like, what does that even mean?
But it's the opposite is true as well. If you don't love others, you can't love yourself. Because if the Course in Miracles says you become generous out of self-interest. If I'm not willing to love others, I can't love myself. Like you said yourself, it's all a projection. If I'm seeing guilt in others, I'm going to feel guilty. That's what the Course says. That's what the law of cause and effect is. Every thought you think. So this idea I can't love others until I love myself is one of the pieces of New Age bullshit that's done a lot of harm.
Yeah, love it.
This
Absolutely love it.
self-reference, this consistent, chronic reference that I think has also led to a kind of infantilization in the higher consciousness movement. It's kept us small. It's kept us weakened and diminished. You're weak if you don't have the capacity to some say, oh, get over yourself, to yourself. You're weakened if you don't have the capacity to say, get up, get out of bed, take a shower, get dressed, and go kick ass. You can cry later. You can cry when you come home later. You're weakened if you don't have the capacity to do that. The world is in such trouble today. It cannot wait till we all become enlightened masters. We need a critical mass of us who are willing to act, to rise to the occasion despite our wounds. And that is part of what heals our wounds. When you look at the people in history who have done the most extraordinary things, they weren't without wounds. They were not without sorrow. They were not without childhood trauma. Come on, everybody. We've gone too far into this constant obsession with self.
It's so true. And even speaking about the wounds, I mean, the things that's a big, like it's been around for the last couple of years, is like really working with your wounds, and your trauma is a big one that's been bantered around. But what you're saying is actually stop focusing so much on the self, right? Like we've all gone through it. We've come here as a soul to experience and expand. That's why experienced those traumas and those wounds. But I always say, for me, I'm the woman that I am today because of those wounds, because of those traumas.
Well, the course, yeah, yes, in my own life, some of my strengths are because of the traumas where I worked through them. Some of my weaknesses are because of some of the places where I've not yet totally worked through them. But I do know that I'm a choice. For instance, I ran for president in 2024, and it was a deeply traumatic, brutal experience. I came out of it knowing, okay, you have a choice. You can either be, and everybody will see it and go, oh, it's really a shame about her. Or you can break through. It's your choice. You can, and some people today, and I feel sorry for young people who are almost trained to wear their trauma like a badge. No, that's not. I'm so glad. I went through something when I was 17 years old that was very terrible. And I certainly received help. The society was advanced enough, psychiatric help, etc. But no one at that time ever suggested to me, this is a trauma that will be with you throughout your life, and it will become your calling card, and it will be your identity. And it sort of was never suggested to me. I was told your life will become bigger around this. And I feel sorry for younger people, particularly who are told, and sometimes by our community, Catherine. We've got to own this, and people like you and I have to be people who sweep some of this away. To the alchemy, the divine alchemy, by which that which wounded us becomes the sacred wound, by which we become stronger and softer. That's the work. Because this constant, Carolyn Mace called it woundology, right? Some people say, well, I have an anxiety disorder. Who doesn't? Who doesn't? This world is upside down. This world is dominated by a thought system based on fear and the belief in separation. The soul is not at home here. Who isn't anxious? And you know what I've seen, Catherine, recently that really makes me sad? I've seen that kind of BS perpetrated and used against young women for a long time. And you know what? Now I see it with young men as well. And it weakens. Oh, I'm masking. Who isn't? I mean, the ego is posturing. And people describe what they do. And I think that it's really a service to say, honey, we're all there. That's a human condition. It doesn't mean you're mentally ill. It means life is hard and individuation is hard. And, I always say to people at colleges, the 20s are hard. They're not a mental illness. And I think also for women like us, we must not coddle within ourselves. The ditzy woman phase is over. And when we see it in one another, girlfriend, I'm not going to sit here for an hour on that. Do you know what I'm saying? But if we're talking what you're doing to get over it and how I can help you, and we can move through it together, I'm all for that. So I think we all have to be willing to tweak our consciousness a little in relation to some of these things.
Absolutely. I love it. I'm having a bit of a giggle because I can so relate to everything you're saying. It's so true. And I love the fact that you've normalized everything, because it is like you're talking about anxiety, depression. It is no wonder everyone's going through it and then being medicated for it, because it's really tough.
And it's up, but if I break my finger, I will feel physical pain. That is a functional response because it's my brain telling me you've got to reset this bone. Sometimes being depressed is a functional response. It's your soul telling you, reset your thinking on this. Humanity's going in a wrong direction. Sometimes the fact that we feel something's off is because it is. So psychic pain can be functional. Why do you feel this way? Something's off, something's wrong.
And how can
At
you
the moment,
not? How can you not? If we like, we are all one collective consciousness. If someone's going through something at, even on the other side of the world, we're going to feel it. Whether it's, or maybe can't articulate it in words, but we will experience it from an energy or vibrational frequency. Like something within us will go, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling scared, but I don't even know why.
but if we look deeply, we will know why. And then live within the space where you do know why. I'm scared because this disease might kill me. Well, let's rethink death. You know, everything that scares us is a call for a rethink. I'm scared this disease might harm me. Let's rethink what healing means. I'm scared I might not ever be loved. Let me think deeply about what I do to keep love at bay. I'm scared because the world might fall apart. Let me rethink how I might be part of those participating in the solution. I mean, we're all living right now, Catherine, at a moment where part of us would like to get in bed, put the covers over our heads, wake me up when it's over. But we need a critical mass, not a majority, but a critical mass of people on the planet who are rising to exemplify and embody a better way. And we're all going through the things in our own lives, which are the challenges that the whole world is going through, like a hologram. We're all embodying the entirety of the chaos and the disruption. And that, don't you sometimes feel like this is a time in which you're shedding a skin and you're shedding a
Absolutely.
skin, and it's like I know I don't want to be her anymore, but then who am I? And it's terrifying. And the way you're growing a new skin, and everybody's going through it, and everybody's going through it 3 and 4 in the morning. You know what I'm saying? We're all going through it.
It's reassuring because I don't know, I haven't met anybody else. Everyone says, you think it's normal? Like, do you think it's menopause? I mean, you're getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Is that? And I'm like, that's my time. And I get up just without an alarm. It's just the time where there's silence and I can be and go within without the interruption.
Well, I remember reading in a Seth book many years ago, the Seth books by Jane Roberts. He said, "You are asleep for too long and you are awake for too long. Your sleep state should be more awakened and your awakened state should be more dreamlike." This whole sleep for 8 hours straight thing is a product of industrialization. And so really the people on the earth who have a healthier, like they're asleep when the blood sugar would have them be asleep, they're awake when the negative are the Mediterranean countries where there's a siesta in the afternoon. There are a lot of times in the afternoon you should just be asleep. And then there are times in the middle of the night when you should be awake. That's when you should write. That's when you should meditate. That's when you have your best thinking. So we have to we have to reorient our economies in such a way that people can have a more natural alignment with the rhythms of the body as they relate to the darkness and the light. Yeah,
I
so it is
love
normal.
I love the way you put that. I'm French and I actually have siestas. So I actually do. I listen to my body. So even though I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I will go and have a sleep in the afternoon if my body
Yeah.
asks me to.
Yes, yes, yes. And then some people simply can't because of, economic demands and so forth, which is a shame. And that's why we're going to have to work on all that, girls. We can't.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Mary, I'm curious, where to, like after this book, and I highly recommend everyone to check out the Midlife Awakening. I'd like to maybe kind of like give a high summary, but I was curious too, after going through your book, what changes, because you were talking about like that next, I think it was that next 15 years of like reinventing yourself and reliving your life. What does that look like for you?
Well, right now I'm in London because this is where my grandbabies are. And that, for me, there's a lot there. If I'm not around them in their early childhood, I'll never be anything but a nice lady who comes every once in a while. So for me, it is very intentional about family and wanting to show up. I think a lot of people, a lot of women I know, uh, having I don't know if you have children.
Yeah, I do.
Having adult children is just as complicated as having younger children. I think some of us feel we have an opportunity with grandchildren to kind of get it right. Maybe in certain times in our children's lives we didn't, and being present and all of that. So for me, it has entailed crossing the ocean to be with my grandbabies as much as possible. Also, much of kind of what you indicated before. Some things I know what I want. I know what I don't want. Also, I think this is not just for me, but for many people, been there, done that about so many things. Um, I don't have, you mentioned before fear of missing out. I can sit on my couch and read a book, and I'm not worried that I'm missing out on anything going on out there because it's all going on in here. And so I have an easier time um, enjoying slowing down. The real repair of the world is vertical more than it's horizontal, going deeper. When you think of some of the mistakes you made when you were young because you were moving too fast, um, thinking things through. And it's a relief. It's a relief. Um, and also something that we both mentioned before, I've finally gotten to the point of I realize whoever's in my life right now, whatever circumstances are in my life right now, those are the ones. Are you inhabiting this relationship? Are you inhabiting this circumstance as self-actualized a version of yourself as you can reach? One of my own mistaken patterns in my life had to do with relationships, had to do with professional opportunities, had to do with cities I lived in, had to do with a lot of areas in my life. I got there too late. While it was happening, my mind was elsewhere, usually past or future. And only later did I realize, oh my God. And sometimes it was too late. The person had moved on, the opportunity had dissolved. So whoever you know right now, don't miss the depth of possibility in this circumstance. If it's happening, it means it's part of the divine curriculum. By definition, it's perfect for your growth. Show up. And that takes, uh, it's like when you work out at the gym, it's so you can move. When you work out spiritually, it's so that you can be still and reflective and not run out to do something to get away from being with it. Be with this. I remember my daughter, when she was a little girl, used to say to me, Mommy, be with me. I remember once a few years ago, I said, my daughter's now 35. And I said to her, once a few years ago, I said, oh, honey, be with me. And she looked at me like this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to be with those little grandbabies.
Yeah, I'm not there yet, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm also, I can relate to what you're saying, being a single mother and raising a son on my own, or having to work. And absolutely, it's like the guilt. Here we go again, the guilt about not being there all the time for him. But I know when he will have the grandchildren, I will make up, because I hear that all the time.
How
That
old is he?
he's 31. He'll be 32 in
Oh,
September. Yeah.
well, by 31, we don't have the, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't have, yeah,
Yeah. And we've had
yeah,
the conversations. I mean, he's really cool. He understands that I did the best I could at the time, being the single
yeah.
mother. But it is this thing that, yeah, I hear that when you have the grandchildren, this is where you make up the time, the lost time,
Well, if you can, and
if
if
you
your
can.
children will even allow you to. I mean, it's not like you can't just put it off and hope. But you spend all this time putting down your mother and father, complaining about your childhood, and then you grow up and realize, well, in some ways, I think my mother did it better than I did. And that's like, wow. I was complaining about her, and then you look at, well, in some ways, or I made certain mistakes that were exactly the mistakes my father made of being emotionally unavailable because he was at work. It's like, you get really humble really fast when you take a really good look at your life.
Wow.
And then chapter 3, you try to get it right.
I love that. I could relate to that as well. I would love to, because I'm also very conscious of your time. I would love to maybe high level talk about your midlife awakening book, creating a miraculous next chapter, because you are coming to Australia, which is really exciting. So I've got the dates here on the 22nd, Brisbane, 25th, Melbourne, 26th, Sydney. Give us an overview of your new book. Well, I know it's
Well,
kind of revived.
I will be talking about this book, but I will be talking about the state of the world and the evolutionary challenge of this moment and how all of us are experiencing both individually and collectively the chaos and the disruption of the times in which we live, much like we were talking about earlier, one world crumbling, one world struggling to be born, and how we can all inhabit this moment in a way that provides the maximal growth opportunity for repair and regeneration. It is a global conversation now. Everywhere in the world is going through these same struggles between an old way of doing things and a new way of doing things. And we individually are experiencing that. And what are the tools of righteousness? Righteous means right use of the mind. What is the call of evolution at this moment to make a leap into another frequency, another pattern of thought and feeling and behavior that will interrupt what could be a suicidal march for the human race. So that's what I'll be talking about. And as you and I have been talking about today, this is embodied in our own individual lives, but also collectively. So I'll be talking about what it feels like is the listening in Australia when I'm there.
I love that. And if you when you're talking about from a collectively, what would be that one step for us when you're thinking about the way that we need to shift and we shift the paradigm, really, shift the way that we think, shift the way that we feel. I mean, that's big, a big call, right? When you think about it collectively, what's one of those things that you see as stepping to make the change that needs to be made?
When we were children, we learned about evolution, and we learned that when a species would get to the point, if a species got to the point, where its collective behavioral patterns were not sustainable for the existence, the continued existence of that species, it would either mutate and evolve, or it would go extinct. We have come to the point as a human race where our collective behavioral patterns are so malfunctional, not dysfunctional. We have moved into malfunctional to the point where if we do not take an evolutionary leap forward, global extinction is a very real possibility. I see the great religious avatars as the mutations. Moses, Buddha, Jesus, they demonstrate another way. What is that other way? It begins with our own individual lives. What would love have me do in this moment? What is the forgiving thought? How can I bless instead of blame? How is a more peaceful resolution of this rather than attack and defense? What is living in the present? And then you look at public policy. It's the same thing. All that politics is our collective behavior. We cannot continue to rape the earth the way we do. We cannot continue to fight each other the way we do. And that's true collectively as well as individually. So, what is the one thing we can do is to wake up in the morning, as you and I said. There's a line in the Course where it says, wake up every morning and ask, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say and to whom? Love, use me. Use my hands, use my feet. And you begin to honor your incarnation, whatever country you're in, whatever your race, whatever your ethnicity, whatever your gender, whatever your sexuality. You know, when Moses came down from the mountain and he had been told, tell the Israelites, I will make of you a priestly people. The Israelites in the Bible metaphysically meant humanity. Priestly people, that you stand within the space of your own existence, your own community, your own relationships, as much an example of an alternative way of being as possible. And then you will be assigned. You might be assigned to do a podcast to talk about personal transformation. You might be assigned to working on the environment. You might be assigned to working on peace and reconciliation among nations. You might be assigned to be about food and agriculture. You might be assigned to work about medical and healing, to seek to embody it and then to serve it in whatever segment of the culture and the globe to which we are internally assigned. And that's the name of the game. And everything else is ultimately meaningless. And that's what I'll be talking about.
I love that. And I do that practice. What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say and to whom? I do that. And it's always love and forgiveness towards somebody or somebody that's triggered me.
That's
Love
it?
towards always.
Always. That's always it.
Yeah, always. Oh, Marianne, I can't wait to see you live in Australia. I'm sure there's lots and lots of people that are going to be, well, thrilled with this interview, one, and definitely I know there's going to be a lot of people want to come and see you. The way that we wrap up the show is we always wrap up with 3 shiny golden nuggets. So, Vicky, 3 practical exercises that you would like to leave with our audience today.
Okay, well, number 1, who are you not forgiving? And be at least willing to realize that the love they gave you was real, the love you gave them was real, everything else was just a shared illusion. Put it in the hands of God and do not bring, as you and I were saying, that shadow figure. The second one, this is a moment when we should think of ourselves as spiritual athletes. This is not a moment to indulge immoderate drinking, immoderate drug use, and bad junk food. This is a moment to truly be in shape for this moment. And that means also our spiritual practice, our spiritual discipline. And number 3, who in your life could use a little help?
I love all 3.
Maybe reach out.
Yeah, thank you so very much. Marianne, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing
Thank
your
you. Thank you.
love, your wealth of wisdom. I can't wait
Thank
to
you.
see you when you come to Australia. And I know there's going to be lots of people that can't wait to see you. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you. And I look forward to meeting you in person. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, much love to you.
Much
Bye-bye.
love to you too.